Hi, nice to be here again. Like Krste said, a decade ago, Krste and I wrote this paper, and one of my favorite kind of awards in the academia is the Test of Time Award, where you look 10 years later and see what was really significant. So we're going to get a chance to do that today, is look back at this paper. How did this paper come about? You know, Krste, Andrew, and Jonsep drove this idea of an instruction set architecture, and brand new, clean one, learning from the mistakes of the past, and with the idea that we would use it at Berkeley in our courses and our research, and we thought other faculty would want to use the space as well. The academia didn't seem that interested in it, but about 4 years into the process, we started getting complaints about how come in your courses you're changing the instruction set. Well, that's interesting. The industry complains all the time, but why did they care? And then what we understood is there was this thirst for an open architecture that many companies could use. And once we understood that, we thought that was cool, and that led to us writing this paper. We thought we'd recreate history. When Dave Ditzel and I wrote The Case for RISC in 1980, I sent it to my friends at Digital Equipment Corporation, and they wrote a rebuttal. And so when it appeared, the paper appeared along with the rebuttal, so we invited colleagues at ARM to write a rebuttal to what we did. So these two articles appeared in Microprocessor Report at the same time. I would say what their arguments were, they've demonstrated that proprietary architecture could be compatible across many generations. They said, look, the licensing fees, look how expensive an SoC is. The licensing fees aren't that much. ISAs have to evolve, and we need the licensing money to be able to evolve the ISA and to innovate. And we argued for diversity. ARM already has a lot of products. And this is how they concluded the paper, the last sentence of the paper. First, the commercial need for support, reliability, and constant cost reduction, along with knowledge that you can't just patch an SoC, leads us to say that the only market-driven, nimble, well-supported, licensable ISA can deliver on those demands. So like only licensable can do that. So we're going to look at that now. So I interpret that as, can an open ISA evolve just using volunteers, and then can it really have a diversity of products from different companies and be compatible? So keeping in mind, as we said in the paper, look, there's 3 ways to implement a processor. There'd be like a proprietary one, like NVIDIA used to have their own instruction set for their own microcontrollers, and only they had it. The licensed open source, the ARM model, or where they own it and you get the implementations from them, or this free open source one, a new idea. So with proprietary instruction sets, you can do the first 2, but if you want to do all 3, you need an open ISA. So that was, I think, the challenge for us. So our arguments in the paper about why we wanted a free and open ISA is we said proprietary ISAs stifle competition and maybe innovation. And so I think, yeah, stifle competition pretty clearly. Licensing costs are high and negotiations take a long time. I don't know if they're prohibitive, but they're still very expensive. The companies don't do the software. The software is done by outsiders. Yep, that's true. And many people could design a competent ISA. It just takes attention to detail and a lot of time, but a lot of people could do it. And it's not like the ARM and x86 architectures are just paragons of virtue that make one's eyes water when you read the manual. They work, right? The x86 architecture has evolved for nearly 50 years now. So they've made it work, but it's not, it's not the thing that's the best possible instruction set architecture. And the thing that people forget is that proprietary architectures are tied to the company that owns them, and companies go away. So Digital Equipment went away and took out the Alpha and VAX architecture. SPARC Sun Microsystems went away, took out SPARC. And I never would have thought 10 years ago that the x86 would ever possibly in trouble, but even in today's market, who knows what's going to happen there. Okay, so open instruction sets. Well, what style of instruction set in the paper? Well, we said, RISCs have a successful track record. we said stack architectures and VLAW architectures haven't been successful. As I look back, stack architectures, the WebAssembly, which is this browser assembly language, is stack, but there's no hardware for that. And while VLAW, general purpose computing, has not been popular, it's pretty popular for domain-specific for architectures for the AI accelerators. They often use VLAW. I said new CISCs haven't been successful in a long time. That's true for general purpose, but again, some of the domain-specific AI accelerators use CISC architectures. And we said, RISC dominates mobile devices and dominates the number of processors. What we said 10 years ago was it was 10 billion ARM chips versus 1/3 of a billion x86. Updated today, now it's 30 billion ARM chips and still 1/3 of a billion x86. Okay, so RISC seems like a good principle. Why should we pick RISC-V? Because there were two competing alternatives. Spark, the 32-bit version of Spark was open, and there was something called Open RISC, which was a community-developed one. Why should we go with RISC-V? Well, we argued back then, we thought the future was going to be what Krste talked about a little bit ago, a base with extensions and the option to put customization in. We thought that'd be important. Compact instructions we thought would be important. And then a variety of address sizes and a variety of floating point sizes. Looking back now, what we actually said about the 128-bit, which seems phenomenal, we said maybe 10 years from now, warehouse scale computers would have enough flash memory that they would exceed 2 to the 64 bytes. And I think they have. If a data center has 50,000 servers and you put 8 SSDs per server and each has 64 terabytes, that actually is more than 2 to the 64th bytes. So we would be there today if that's what people wanted to do. And the flash industry keeps moving on at a factor of 2 every 3 years. So it's going to keep using up bits if we wanted to address it that way. But there hasn't been a big commercial market requirement for it. And as Krste just mentioned, we put in support for 128-bit floating point, which I think high-performance computers would like to have available, but they're just not a very large market. And we didn't anticipate AI, which needs much smaller data types, can get away with much smaller data types, 16-bit, 8-bit, and 6-bit. So I think that was kind of a toss-up. We did pretty well, but not got everything right. We learned from previous mistakes of previous generations. The alpha left out load and store byte. That was a bad idea. ARM included a shift optionally before every arithmetic operation. That probably wasn't a good idea for clock rates. And letting the microarchitecture details like delayed branch go through, that's probably not a good idea. So that looks pretty good. I think of it as an elegant design. That's a matter of taste. We can argue about that. And we'll talk about the strong momentum with multiple operations. But yeah, I think there's a lot behind it. So we said in that paper, our goal's not modest. Our goal was to be world domination, is to use RISC-V everywhere. I'd say that's still the goal. It's already very popular and embedded. And Krste talked about the markets. Automobiles. It's still starting. It takes a while for software to get there, but starting to get there in the data center. AI looks, this market we didn't know about, it's very popular with both Meta and startups using it. Okay. The early signs of momentum at that time, which got us interested, was IIT Madras contacting us, and then efforts both at England in Cambridge and Cambridge in Massachusetts. Those were the indications that organizations were using it. Now, RISC-V has more than 400 organizations and more than 5,000 individual members. In evidence that was real, Berkeley had designed 8 chips. Amazingly, 2 billion SoCs are going to ship this year, projected to grow to, I think it's 20 billion by 2031. And then we said in that thing, we're going to start having meetings. And the first meeting was January 15th in Monterey, a few months after the paper came out. And we had, 100 people there for that one. And this, I think, is the 10th summit in North America now. And we have them all over the world. So yeah, the momentum, the early signs, the momentum has continued. Okay, so wrapping this up and looking back at the paper, one of the things that was really interesting on the 10th anniversary was during COVID. So actually my granddaughter and I made a documentary interviewing all the people, the key people in the RISC-V community, and asking them how they got involved and what did they think was going. And there's this kind of universal excitement about being able to make a lingua franca, a single instruction set to be used everywhere. And then if that was going to happen, it was really important it wasn't proprietary, so it wouldn't be tied to the fortune of the company. And for a lot of the people we talked to, this paper was their introduction to RISC-V. It had the arguments, and it had a little like green card at the back that had the summary of the instruction set, and that's how they learned about it. We presented it as promising, and we thought there were advantages in power and performance in area, but and I think that's held up. And then this incredibly ambitious one to be able to go along. Oh, yeah, I haven't been clicking. Has that this open implementation that's universally adopted. That vision is still plausible and makes sense with what's going on. Now, how about the companion article? One of the questions, one of their skepticisms was, can an open ISA evolve using volunteers? And I think that was a reasonable thing to bring up. And I think from what you've heard from the first two talks today is we have done that as a community. We have brought people, hardware and software people together to collaborate on instruction set design, reach consensus, and move forward, and brought in a lot of important features to RISC-V. But it wasn't obvious that was going to work, but I'd say it has. And then can we really have lots of different companies building to the same architecture, using whichever way, getting cores from others or doing themselves, and that has succeeded. So in life, it's pretty rare when you have an argument and you actually get, later you can get the resolution. So on their companion article, Ian Smith and Ian Ferguson 10 years ago were leaders at ARM, and today Ian Ferguson is a member of Sci-Fi, so joined the RISC-V team. So it's kind of surprising. It's satisfying that he has come to his senses, I guess. Okay, with that, I think that's it. Thank you very much.
Dave, please don't leave the stage just yet. So the board of directors, Dave has been on the board of directors as vice chair of the foundation since inception, but recently said he'd like to step down. I've known Dave for a while, and he's seriously trying to retire, really, and do more fun things with his life. But the board of directors unanimously said we'd like to give Dave an award and appreciation for all that he's done for RISC-V over its period. So here's the award. And so just to read the citation on the award. So this is for Dave in recognition and appreciation of your visionary dedication, leadership, and contribution in driving the global collaboration and adoption of RISC-V. So thank you, Dave.
Thanks very much. All right, thank you.